Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
For those long-time listeners of the show, you know that when it comes to classic cinema, we just can't get enough, and you're within the sound of my voice. That must mean you're in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast, where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals and pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and in a conversational fashion, because that's how we like to do things around here. And if you like how we do things, I'm assuming you do, you're listening right now, you can subscribe to the podcast. We really appreciate that. You can find us basically wherever you find your podcasts. Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google, it's all good. And plus, you can find every single one of our episodes archived over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. And plus, if you can subscribe there, that'd also be great. Also, we'd love it if you'd follow us on social media. You can do that at Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, at either In the Seats or at It's Podcast One for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please come by to In the Seats, intheseats.ca for all the latest and greatest in movie reviews, news, some television, basically anything about the moving image, because that's what we love to do. We love writing about it, and we love it when you read about it, so please pay us a visit. We got another fun one on this episode, as we are diving a little further into the TCM Classic Film Festival, which is going on now in the States, either at the TCM channel or on the TCM Curates hub over at HBO Max. And we are talking with a filmmaker, a programmer, a general man about town, a really fascinating guy. We were talking with Mr. Bruce Goldstein, whose short film Pelham One Two Three, New York City Underground, is having its broadcast premiere as a part of the TCM Classic Film Festival, and it takes a look at not just one of his favorite movies, obviously, The Taking of Pelham 123, but it gives us a little bit of history behind not just the making of the film, but sort of films in New York as well. And he's done other ones, highlighting films like The Naked City and Harold Lloyd's Speedy. But this one's a lot of fun as he takes us through various landmarks and makes various comments just on production and how it might be one of the more realistic New York films to have ever been made. And we talk with Bruce just about, not just this film, but sort of New York in general and what makes it such a unique cinematic character. And I hope you enjoy our conversation, which we're going to join pretty well in progress, because it's a good one.
123 was remade twice. The first time was for television in 1994, shot entirely in Toronto with sparkling subway trains, clean subway stations. It just didn't work. It's a terrible movie.
I will definitely agree with you that is the lesser of all the Pelham 123s, without a question.
Oh, you know it then.
Oh, I know that one for sure, yeah.
Oh, you're the only, I think me and you are the only two who know that, because I had to find it on Amazon and bought a crummy copy for $2, and then I threw it away. It was horrible.
It's so bad.
Even though Lorraine Bracco is from my hometown, I do want to tell you a quick Toronto story. All the Hollywood studios have New York streets, as you know, right? So Paramount's New York Street had a big fire. The whole thing burned down. So they rebuilt it, and it took a couple of years, and they had a big dedication ceremony, and Gary Marshall was the MC. And he said to the huge crowd gathering, he says, "And today we dedicate the New York street. So the next time we want to make a movie in New York, we don't have to get on the plane to Toronto."
The tax credits are nice, but it's not quite the same. I definitely agree with you.
I've never been to the Toronto Film Festival because it's not really my thing, first run films, but I'd love to visit Toronto. And post-pandemic, we'll come over.
Fingers crossed. We'd love to have you for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously,
actually, we're not allowed to go into Canada right now.
I know. Well, I know. It's
crazy. Okay. Montreal, by the way, doesn't hack it for New York either. They've got one or two buildings that look like New York. That I've been to recently. So, okay, I'm sorry to
No, no
please.
problem, no problem. But I mean, obviously, thank you for the time. And just, I guess my first question is, I mean, we've already been talking about it a little bit. Uh, the Taking of Pelham 123 is this iconic film, but it really, to me, as a fan, it almost is very sort of symptomatic of how much of a character New York in itself is. Can you talk a little bit just about not only that film, but I mean, I guess just sort of how, like we've said, New York is kind of irreplaceable as a character, and as much as we try to fake it and recreate it, you can't.
Yeah, you can't really fake it. The reason New York is so popular among filmmakers is it's such a visual delight. I mean, you can't, you could, it's like why they went to LA. Because in LA they had the mountains and they had the ocean, they had all these things. But in New York you could find so many different things to, to make it visually cinematic. I have a fantastic example. I was reading, someone sent me the first draft of the Naked City script, which was then called Homicidal. And there's a scene where the parents of the murdered woman, Jean Dexter, are at Bellevue Morgue, and then they walk over to the East River, which is really close to the Bellevue Morgue. But in the movie, they go to Brooklyn. And I said, why are they going to Brooklyn? It makes no sense. It's totally without logic. But in fact, you think about it, they went to Brooklyn for the shot. This gorgeous shot of the sun setting below the Manhattan Bridge. It didn't matter whether it was logical or not. But New York affords all this magnificent, different, from the Lower East Side to Midtown with rich people, poor people, all huddled together. It's fantastic, you know.
Now, I mean, New York
Yeah, New
always.
York has been a character in a bunch of movies. Even On the Town, which is not a good movie, but it has a wonderful opening. That the opening montage is fantastic, and there you see it as a character.
But it seems to, like, at least from my perspective, it seems to have stronger moments in certain decades, like with Dassin, Naked City. But I mean, particularly
Dassin,
the
but
'70s,
Dassin.
like so much that came out of the '70s as well.
Well, the '70s was great because New York had a reputation of being crime-ridden, so it was great for crime pictures and crumbling and all these problems it had. It was cinematic material in films like The French Connection and Pelham and the Seven Ups and all those great movies, and the blaxploitation movies like Shaft. You know, it was a great. That was a golden age for New York movie making in the early '70s.
Well, I mean, I even think of something like Love Story, which I mean, I'm not a big fan of, but it looks great because it's like a lot of it is shot in New York.
You know what, Dave? I haven't. David, is Dave okay?
Six,
Uh,
whatever works.
um, I haven't seen Love Story since it came out. I hate to say that. You realize that's 51 years ago? Jesus. I have to look at it again in terms of being a New York movie. That's interesting. I didn't. Yeah, I would love to. But yeah, I did a whole series on New York comedies. I called it Madcap Manhattan. There's so many great. And then there's '70s New York comedies that I love, like The New Leaf, A New Leaf with Elaine May, which she directed, and Walter Matthau, and I love the Sunshine Boys.
Yeah,
And The Odd Couple's a great New York comedy. I mean, and with great feeling for the city. Neil Simon really knew the city too, you know. You
for
can't
sure.
fake your knowledge of the city. You really need New Yorkers to do it. For example, I show the scene from The Warriors. Now, I know The Warriors was not intended to be an accurate depiction of the city, but Walter Hill was from California. He didn't care that they got on the subway to go to Union Square on the wrong line. But a New Yorker would care. Jules Dassin cared. Joe Sargent, who was born in Jersey City but grew up in Manhattan, cared. He knew. They knew. What I love about Pelham is how accurate it is. It doesn't get anything except for those two things I point out, which were beyond their control, basically. Um, it's really dead on accurate.
Is there anybody else who's come close? Because, like you say, the grime and just sort of the elements in Pelham really make it feel as genuine as humanly possible.
And also, they avoid. I love the fact that and the same with the Naked City. Naked City has a shot of the Empire State Building. They avoid tourist shots, you know? Like most New York movies start with not most, but there's a whole slew of movies in the 30s and 40s. A lot of them start with the same stock shot of the Brooklyn Bridge with the ferries underneath, and then shot of the skyline. Pelham has nothing like that. It's totally a New Yorker's view of the city. That's what I love about it.
And Speedy almost feels like the exact opposite of that, where they were going for the tourist shots almost.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. It's funny that scene in Speedy where they get on the subway at Bowling Green to go to Coney Island, and the New Yorker in 1928 wrote, "You can't get to Coney Island from Bowling Green," but actually I figured out that they could have, it's in the film, that they could have done it, but it's a circuitous way. And in those days, you had to pay an extra nickel to go between the subway lines. They're now all integrated, but in those days, they were two private lines, and you had to pay an extra fare if you crossed them,
How important do you think it is just sort of to remember this history? Because, there will be fans out there who will watch a movie and go, oh, who cares if it's New York? But when you're really understanding the film and you're understanding the material, having it be genuine also adds so much more contextual sort of layers to the story as well.
Yeah, of course. I would think, though, that the TCM audience would care, because they do care about history, and they do care about, to understand some of the things makes you understand the film better, right? Of course the TCM audience would care. I think maybe the average moviegoer wouldn't care. But a lot of the people I showed my Naked City doc to had never seen Naked City. Even what I call civilians, meaning they're not movie people like us, right? Even civilians found it interesting, the effort they made to get the shots and that kind of thing.
Well, and we live in such a unique time right now where what things that TCM are doing and things that you're doing are allowing film fans these opportunities to sort of get a little peek behind the curtain and get a little bit more context to sort of the history of cinema, and especially cinema in New York, which has been such a vital character throughout the years. And I'm kind of curious, how important is it for you to just keep championing the fact that this city sort of has a life of its own when it comes to cinema?
Well, one thing, this may not answer your question, but one reason I wanted to do both the Naked City and Pelham, I did within months of each other. I had made the one Speedy film, and I had made the Mean Streets 10 years ago. But the reason I wanted to do those two films was kind of partly for New York boosterism. Because someone said New York is dead. Somebody, I won't mention his name, said New York is dead. Or, it's not true. If you walk on the streets, it's alive. It's so vital still, pandemic or no pandemic. We have sidewalk cafes now because the city's allowing restaurants to spill out into the street. It's fantastic, So part of it is I wanted to show people the city's alive and it's a great place and please come back. But yeah, it's been an important. You have to remember one thing about New York. Why did every studio have a New York street? Because like 10% of the movie-going audience was in New York City. Yeah. We had 300. I don't remember how. I did a study, not a study. If you look at the film yearbook of the 30s and 40s, we had like 300 movie theaters in Manhattan in the 30s and 40s. Unbelievable. Like a huge segment of the movie-going population actually lived here. So of course it was fun to see their city. But for the rest of the country too, it represented certain things like wealth. In screwball comedies, the wealthy. But what I love about the three films that I did the docs on, they're all about working class New Yorkers, about the cab driver, trolley driver, cops, and shop girls, shop women, I guess you'd say now. That's what I like about them. And they all, even Speedy does capture the atmosphere of the city. And a lot of movies don't. They just use city as a prop, and that's it. You know.
No, and but you're absolutely right. And I mean, it's an important thing to booster and it's an important thing to build back up. And I mean, having been to New York a few times myself, I love the city dearly. And I swear, I think you made me laugh out loud in the Pelham film because you're absolutely right. That subway station has never been empty in its life. I don't know what Death Wish was thinking.
Even, I was thinking about it. Well, maybe it's empty because of the pandemic, but no. Even when we've closed the subway for the first time. The city's been open 24/7, maybe with the exception of 9/11, since it opened in 1904, right?
Yeah.
Um, but now with the pandemic, the subway has been closed first, I think, for 4 hours or 5 hours at night for cleaning, and now it's down to 2 hours, I believe. And I'm thinking, well, maybe it's empty now. No, but there's an army of cleaners in there, even when it's not open to the public. Originally, it's not quite, it's not the Times Square station, it's the 8th Avenue, but it's in the Times Square area, the most busiest part of the busiest city in America.
For
You know,
sure.
it's never empty, believe me.
But you know
By
what?
the way, I want to a little, I didn't point this out, but in the first shot of me, I'm standing across the street from Smith's Bar, which is the only thing I could find in the Times Square area that looks like New York in the 70s. That bar, that neon sign dates to the 40s, and it's the exact shot of Charles Bronson going into the 8th Avenue. It's the station where he goes down in Death Wish, and you
Right.
could see the Smiths neon in that shot. I didn't point that out. That's for diehard movie fans will notice that.
I'm gonna have to plug in Death Wish as soon as we're done here because I think you're right. That's amazing. But you know what? Thank you for the time today, Bruce. This was a lot of fun, and thank you for championing film and championing New York on film, which is has such a
I
vital
don't want to
legacy.
get typecasted just making films about New York locations, but it's fun. And the detective work, especially with Naked City, was a lot of fun.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure.
Yeah.
Thanks. Keep up the good work, man, and thank you for the time.
Thank you, Dave, and good luck with your podcast.
All right, thank you.
All right, see you. Bye.
All right.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.